All right. Welcome, everyone, to the party that is pure, 7th National Conference. I'm Crisfulla, and I lead the talented team at Elsevier Support Consulting, Faculty Profiling Services, and Product Development for Pure. The Elsevier and Pure teams are located in many regions where you are. Pure provides support for your region from Denmark, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, London, New York City, Philadelphia, and Arizona. And I'd like to put a special welcome out to our newest clients in our newest areas, Bolivia and Puerto Rico. Bienvenida. The Pure International Conference is a forum to connect with a community of peers using research information systems. This now annual event attracts registrants from an ever-growing community of over 400 organizations, representing 46 countries. This year, our registration for the two events has exceeded 700 registrants. Woohoo! Themes for this year's conference are achieving open science goals, maintaining data quality, cross-institutional Pure communities, reporting and insights, demonstrating social and economic impact, and managing an efficient pre- and post-award funding workflow across the organization. In prior conferences, we reported on the compliance of Pure for European GDPR and our major progress on accessibility standards. This year, I'd like to comment on information security. It's a critical topic considering the headlines where in both 2020 and 2021, a major European university was in the headlines for loss of their local networking systems to ransomware and hackers. Since the last conference, the entirety of the process whereby Elsevier design, test, and operate Pure, including information security practices, now certified by an external auditor for compliance to ISO 27001. This is an international standard for maintaining an information security management system. It includes the assessment and treatment of information security risks. Elsevier employs many data security professionals to earn and retain the trust that you place in us with your data. Those investments in reliable processes and data security have allowed us to again achieve hosted site uptime statistics well exceeding the Pure contractual service level agreement. And through those improved investments in quality control practices and testing, we have also reduced the number of reported bugs by 25%. And our continuous improvement in training of our dedicated Pure support team has led to 92% of service tickets receiving from you a rating of satisfied or highly satisfied. That's up from 89% in prior years. Since the last conference, logins to Pure have grown, content volume has grown. Our anonymized logs now indicate over 1.2 million project or award records database tables. You've been quite busy. During 2021, the Pure new reporting module achieved a peak year-over-year growth of 150% or saved reports, and the rate of engaged portal activity, even with less visibility on user sessions due to user consent options introduced. So on today's agenda, you'll hear from customers summarizing some research conducted on the use of RIM systems across the US and experience in assessing College of Arts and Humanities, Social Science, and you will hear from clients and product managers on topics such as deep dives into data quality, tracking research data sets, managing publication dates, the Pure Portal redesign project, and the 2022 full roadmap. The conference platform, yes, we somehow manage to change it every year. In the Connections Hub, you'll be able to connect with other delegates attending the conference. Once you're connected, you can engage in live chat, have a call, schedule meetings, and message. In the Expo Gallery, you can meet members of your Pure user group who will have a booth and also engage and discuss with topic-specific Pure user communities of interest, for example, award management. You can meet third-party non-Elsevier software service providers or independent data integration service providers familiar with getting data into or out of Pure. Also, the Pure support team and some local customers consultants will have a booth in the Expo Gallery, and you can meet representatives from some other Elsevier solutions. In the agenda, there's a dedicated time for you to visit the Expo Gallery during a session break, and the Expo Gallery will be open 30 minutes prior to the beginning of scheduled conference sessions all week, and again, 30 minutes after the end of scheduled conference sessions. Within each session, you will see a Q&A function. Moderators will queue up the questions to be addressed by the speaker at least during the last 5 minutes and maybe more depending on the length of the talk. We must finish each session promptly on time, so it's possible that not all questions are answered, but it's often the case that speakers are readily available to share their time afterwards. Don't forget, there's a global community of over 400 Pure administrator type role persons who have registered on Pure's community Slack. So far they have sent 8,300 messages to each other, mostly between Pure clients and each other directly. So any of these community members may be able to assist or share an opinion or a topic relevant to your work with Pure. So check that out after the conference. I'd like to thank in advance our session moderators for today. They are Katie McKen from the University of Bath. Katie is the head of research policy and information there, and Laura Simon from the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. Laura serves as the research support librarian at the Bernard Becker Medical. Now, let me set the stage for our keynote talk and introduce our keynote speaker. Universities are undergoing change. That's an understatement. We spoke last year about how the decline in international student income due to COVID restrictions has rocked, in some cases, already tenuous financial situations for many. And that forced a sharper focus on making sure decisions taken with scarce resources are the right ones to see the university through to sunnier days. We spoke about what data will underpin and provide evidence for these more fundamental transformational bets that are taking place. This year, we've asked the head of research to join us. We've asked this person to share perspective on what it looks like to be a part of an institution evolving its research strategy rapidly, see and understand the research enterprise, and what it is like to be a member of a wider ecosystem, a community of research institutions collaborating together on education and research in time zones. Last year, our keynote speaker was from the Americas. So like the Ryder Cup in golf, we properly rotate back to Europe biannually. This speaker can represent a European view in quite some aspects. He has for 4 years been on the board of the European Association of Research Management and Administrators. Our speaker earned his PhD in molecular genetics from the National University of Ireland, worked at the Institute of Biochemistry at the University of Frankfurt, and spent time at the University of Leeds in the UK. He was a senior scientist with St. Luke's Institute of Cancer in Ireland, and in 1994 moved to a position as executive secretary of the Irish Research Scientists Association, responsible for many of the briefing and policy documents prepared by the association that ultimately led to the establishment of the Science Foundation of Ireland and the program for research in third-level institutions with a combined budget of $13 billion. Having left the bench, John moved into research and innovation management, and for the present is head of research at the Technological University of Dublin. He's currently serving as EARMA chairperson, and his interest is in what makes research sustainable in new, small universities and the transition to open research. John is on a number of national and international policy groups, including Ireland's National Open Research Committee and the Irish government's Higher Education Research Group. John has been a radio journalist, co-producing and presenting what was until recently Ireland's longest running science radio show and the Millennium Thomas Davis lecture series on Irish public radio broadcaster RTE. John has also done time as an itinerant PhD examiner in various places in Ireland and Europe. Please welcome Dr. John Donovan.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm not sure how I follow that up, especially some of the steps in our journey. But first, let me just say a little bit about the structure of. First of all, I'm going to start with an introduction to TU Dublin. So this is a photograph of at the Technological University Dublin. It's our brand new East Quad, which is the home of our Faculty of Creative Arts. TU Dublin itself is a new university, but it's really a brownfield institution. It's an amalgamation of 3 pre-existing institutes of technology, each with a separate culture, identity, and history, going back nearly 200 years. And in 2020, we were founder members of the European University Initiative, the EUT Plus Alliance. And the DIT, TU Dublin, EUT Plus research journey is one that I will describe here. I would emphasize that we've had a long tradition of teaching rather than research, but that is changing. DIT itself was a merger of 5 technical education institutions dating back to the 1850s. Their role was the training of skilled technicians in various areas. And after the 1992 merger of the 5 institutions into DIT and the elevation of DIT to a somewhat nebulous university level institution, research became one of the so-called Section 5 obligations. Research was an allowable activity, but without any real push, never really thrived. But from 2008 on, DIT became much more active. We had developed our first research strategy, launched our open research journey, and started to recruit and progress staff based on research activity as a criterion. But with lots of legacy and baggage, things only developed slowly. But as the activity grew, there was a core group of PIs, researchers, and a developing research support service. A 5-cycle national research infrastructure investment and a dramatic expansion in the amount of research funding that became available brought new facilities and new possibilities. The 2018 Technological University Act has set research targets for us and fundamentally changes the game. But what are our research KPIs? Bar the last item, all the rest derive from a national higher education landscape document called the Hunt Report that set the technological university up as a model and also the criteria to be one and the criteria to continue to be one. Although they are all easily said, some of them, especially the student numbers, are extremely challenging given the projected doubling of the L8 to L10 provision that is required over the next few years. In the absence of any research strength reference framework, I must do something about that. Identification of 5 strengths beyond just counting the numbers is not going to be easy. And what is clear is that these KPIs are not single discrete entities, but have to be considered as a different strands of a much bigger KPI to be better, to do more, do better, and planning to get there is the quintessential data, information, knowledge, wisdom problem. Since 2008, we have reinvented our research plans 4 times to reflect different environments and possibilities. When we did our first planning, a lot of the information we used was what we could easily find to hand, or we relied on people who knew things to tell us things. And while the general shape of things may have been correct, the details were lacking, and decision-making became very difficult. Phrases like center of excellence, world leading, internationally renowned were thrown around with gay abandon, but with almost no supporting evidence. Finding common themes often descended into a battle of egos and self-declaration, and we weren't doing ourselves any favors. Objectively knowing as much as possible about ourselves was essential and challenging, but it wasn't that we were short of data. At the start of our journey, we had mapped 19 internal research information silos that had grown up organically and existed in splendid isolation from each other for splendidly isolated purposes. We had almost no access to external verified data about ourselves. And finding all the local information we held took 19 phone calls per project. And if you were lucky, the processing charge for each phone call, just answering the phone and hanging up the phone, is estimated to be about €1 per call. And with that up to 1,000 live projects at any time, that becomes €19,000 just to get the internal information. And this does not include any information on proposals being developed or non-journal research outputs. And this situation was clearly unsustainable and needed to change. And we came down on 3 principles. If you're world leading, come and show us who else is saying that about you. Reliable, verified data is incredibly useful and valuable, but there are a few things to keep in mind which can save a lot of grief. Bad data in terms of quality or veracity is bad news, and good data isn't much better without an understanding of the local context. When we started out, our only source of publication data, for example, was what we could extract from our institutional repository. But as a small research actor, collaborations are a very important feature of our activity, and our institutional repository wasn't great at that kind of analysis. Hence, our early decision to subscribe to SciVal and the journey to Pure, which we're in the middle of, began. Bearing all that in mind, and the fact that each of us has a very similar story if we take the time to look, how are we approaching things? We have We have three significant challenges at the moment. The rebuilding of a productive research ecosystem in the university following its establishment. Three diverse cultures don't mix easily or comfortably. The building of a confederated European university of scale, including a new research ecosystem whose ground state will be fundamentally international. And getting these two right so that we, TU Dublin, can meet our strategic objectives while also delivering on those attaching to EUT+. Susie Cullinan from Waterford, who I think is in the audience today, and I, with the support from HEAnet, led a national network of HEIs in Ireland to establish a national procurement framework to bring CRISs to Ireland. We ended up with 6 suppliers in the framework, but our vision for TU Dublin was to create a single research backbone within the university, develop a canonical source of university research data that could power profiling, publicity, people, partnerships, and planning, making us, if not the first port of call, certainly in the top 5, activate local intra-university relationships first, building our critical masses, and then start spreading the news. The action of implementing a modern CRIS is already having a profound effect on our understanding of our activity. Simply preparing for the move to Pure produced some real surprises for us, allowing for the fact that we were starting to include figures from our 2 other campuses. Our research active cohort, admittedly based on a looser interpretation of our definition of research active, has nearly tripled. The number of countries we are collaborating has grown by a similar amount. The number of organizations we are working with has risen almost tenfold. And though we in the research office suspected we were not getting the full picture, this was a bit of a shocker. And all this comes down to the original 19 silos of data we spoke about. We know that when we line up our institutional repository, which is Digital Commons, the records of our research outputs are going to soar. A division we long suspected in our research cohort turns out to be true. One concentrates on research students, one focuses on Erasmus projects, one focuses on research projects, one focuses on internal funding, one sees the opportunities in the wider world. These all hint at a collection of new opportunities to be grabbed, but it's only by knowing ourselves that we can make the most of them. But all of this is not happening in isolation. In 2020, TU Dublin was one of 8 European technical universities that established the European University of Technology, EUT+ for short. EUT+ is one of 41 such initiatives around Europe involving 276 universities in 30 countries, and probably more than 2 million students. The ultimate goal of EUT+ is to establish a confederated university leveraging the potential of all the partners. The closest example that I can find, thanks to Tina, was the Big Ten consortium in the US. But even here, though the EUT journey started later, it is intended to go much further than that for the Big Ten consortium. But what is the European Universities Initiative? Well, this is what the Commission says, and I'm not going to read it all out. But in essence, it's about leveraging the existing and enormous public investment in universities to future-proof European higher education provision. And the big payback would be in terms of skilled human capital output and a robust intellectual infrastructure to help deal with the real challenging and wicked problems that face us all. But how are we eating this particular elephant? In EUT+, we are starting with commingling our research and innovation with a number of actions. A charter for open research and a declaration of open research principles. A single EUT+ institutional repository currently housed in OpenAIR. A community CRIS and all the new wisdoms that will bring. A common academic press / publisher. The development of a set of DORA-Leiden friendly indicators and protocols for use across the Alliance. We have already identified 5 proto-research institutes and the routes to get there. And we work with a number of cross-alliance groups on matters of common interest, including IARMA, where, thank you very much, Patrick, but I'm no longer chair of IARMA at the moment, who are looking to establish a group of RMAs, research managers and administrators across these alliances. One of the really big issues is squaring the issue of the appropriate Commission competence in the higher education space and avoiding the need to have a new treaty, itself a long, long process. But national governments are reluctant, to put it mildly, to commit their taxpayers' resources to a supranational university with no guarantees of return. though many national regulatory agencies are working with the alliances to explore what could be done. The French presidency of the Union in 2022 and the French election later on are both pushing everybody's buttons at the moment. And then there's the simple matter of appropriate governance and legal personality for these alliances. But hey, those are going to be simple problems. These alliances are inherently remote in the sense that we've used during the current unpleasantness. SARS-CoV-2 has taught us all some valuable lessons. On March the 12th, 2020, our university was closed and we were all sent home. In my unit, we had prepared for working remotely for years, a little bit under the radar, it has to be said. By the next morning, we were fully remote and team members were actively adjusting to the new situation and discovering that all the palaver we normally had to go through to do something was completely unnecessary. I don't think that would be a shock to anybody. Within a week, we were operating as if this was how we always had done things, but it was not a cakewalk at the same time. There were issues and we were very coherent. We are a very coherent and established group for whom interactions with clients are very important, but we did it. How did others fare? There have been a number of articles published over the last year or so looking at the effects of the pandemic on teaching role in universities, but almost nothing on the backroom operations that are essential for the smooth running of any university. When I talk to my colleague service managers, the results are very mixed. But I teach on an IARMA early RMA career development program, and every year we do a survey of the participants before they join the program. And for the last 2 cohorts, we've asked them how they found working during lockdown. And the answer is about the same. The majority of the admittedly small number of participants reported it was the same or easier as working from the office. In fact, the average score is just under neutral, meaning that on balance, people found it marginally easier. They loved the ability to focus on the job at hand, but lament the lack of opportunity to meet people. They loved the newfound collegiate atmosphere, but lament the pressure to work longer hours. They love the time they have back to control their lives. But from a manager's point of view, the productivity of my team is up by probably 70% as a combination of reducing procedural faff, reduced commuting time, and in TU Dublin, what's known as walking time, and allowing colleagues to organise the working day around what they needed to do. We all needed time at various stages to deal with the impact of SARS-CoV-2 in our lives, and being able to organise our work with some autonomy makes working easier. It's not as if we were short of work either. We are installing a new CRIS, redesigning our university and building another one. The number of proposals our PIs wrote in 2020 was 30% up on the previous year, and it's up by probably a similar fraction again this year. Is this a consistent trend? I don't know. But there are a few lessons I think we should learn from this that we need to keep. The first one is, and the most important one for me, is you can trust your colleagues. The managerial world won't fall apart if people don't put their jackets on the back of their office chairs. Procedural faff is a huge and unnecessary waste of time and resources. In our particular case, there was a much greater sense of a research ecosystem. Quite apart from the lessons we have learned in our COVID time, there has been dramatic. The local system has organically evolved from a very siloed approach, the research office as secret police, the PI as the victim of the system, to a more sustainable relationship between all of the elements. And while this may have been facilitated by the COVID arrangements, it's hard not to see the impact of other influences. When I was researching the notion of a research ecosystem, in all of the stuff I read, not once did I come across the notion of the ecosystem as a set of interdependent actors all making an effective R&D system work. Nothing described fruitful relationships, nothing described communications. We were left with a series of boxes linked by a series of one-way arrows. Within a university, the real research ecosystem is that within the university. Academics, students, professional services, research offices, technology transfer offices, libraries, infrastructure, etc. all combine to produce unique combinations of skills and abilities. As research moves to the open research rubric, the various actors need to navigate their way through a new and challenging environment. Open research, citizen science, responsible research and innovation, research integrity, EDI, missions, UN SDGs are all bringing a collection of new rules and approaches to doing research. Gone are the days of the lone PI in the ivory tower, and here come the days of the multi-skilled teams, even, heaven forfend, teams of citizen scientists also getting involved. This new environment is extremely challenging, but the RPOs that understand this the quickest are the ones that are going to thrive. We will always need the transcendently brilliant research question. We still need the challenging industrial or health problem, but we need to deliver diverse outputs, outcomes, and impacts to a larger and more diverse group of stakeholders. This year, there's a call in Horizon Europe to support the development of research offices, helping them to prepare and to up their game. The European University Initiative is part of the same process, leveraging what we already have to do better. In our case, we are redesigning our university, and I can see the conversations are changing from a more tactical, get more money, get more students, etc., to a much more strategic. What are the essential investments we must make to have a sustainable long-term research future, a future as a research powerhouse? But there are more challenging things on the horizon. The former president of the EU Commission, Jacques Delors, once said that 50% of research being done now has already been done. We just don't know which. In 2025, the world will produce 181 zettabytes, that's 10 to the power of 23, of data. More than 90% of all existing data has been produced since 2019. Scientific outputs double every 9 years, and COVID has demonstrated the transformative power of open research. In all this noise, how will we make sure that the research questions we need answered can even be identified, never mind worked out? We have all heard of the right to read is the right to mine, and up to now that's been little more than sloganeering, but now we need help. AI is scanning banks of molecules for compounds that might replace rare earth elements in our electronics or our antibiotics. But what happens when AI starts to mine outputs and generate new research questions we haven't even dreamed of? What happens to a PI, to the student, or even the research office? We need to reimagine how our research system ecosystem is working. And just this morning, a recent article in Research Professional's political science blog, AI in research could be a rocket booster or a treadmill, just underlines how important these issues are. To go back to my starting question, how do we continue to identify what we know we continue the human exploration of Vannevar Bush's endless frontier? Thank you.
For those comments. Very exciting, very forward thinking about the future and how we're going to get through future challenges. There were some great comments there about the research office as secret police. I love hearing that. A couple questions myself about while I wait for some questions to come in. So audience, please, if you could submit some questions, it'd be great. And we'll look at those in a second. One of when you said reduce productivity 70% or improve productivity 70% and got rid of procedural faff, great word. Is there any? Could you give me like a sense of? Could you give us a sense of like some of the types of things that were done before that you just sort of jettisoned in the COVID era and said we don't need that anymore?
Okay, so anyone from TU Dublin in the audience, just put your fingers in your ears for a few minutes. One of the big things that we had was we had an absolutely notorious procedure for getting even the simplest things signed, which we then discovered 2 days into the process was actually that process was completely unnecessary. And it was that kind of faff which had grown up in the olden days when everything involved shuffling paper around and probably needed to be done. But the present situation has given us the opportunity to reinvent some of that thing. And the other thing that we're discovering within Pure at the moment as we start to work on the workflows is that there is quite a powerful incentive to slim down the workflow to what you actually need to be done, to identify what you actually need to be done and take some of the advantages that are available to us, hopefully, in the new system when it's up and running.
Great. Okay. I had another question about this. You're part of the network of the European Universities of Technologies, it's sort of consortium across European. It's essentially like universities collaborating together for both education and research. One of the questions that I was thinking about was each institution has policy, whether it's a policy about open access or funding or procedures, and then each of these 6 or 7 partners that you're in there with have their same. So is there a framework that's developing in terms of how people are starting to essentially reconcile processes and things like that across alliances, or is it just sort of at this point trying to get people together collaborating?
I think it's a bit of all three. There's no doubt that a lot of it is being developed sort of on the hoof. There's also no doubt that a lot of it wasn't thought about at the very beginning of the process. And going back when Emmanuel Macron proposed this European University Initiative, working out the little details that make this work wasn't high on his agenda at the time. Now, he's a president, he's very busy, he's not going to think about the small details. But those are the things that are being dealt with. As you come up to them, you need to solve them and move on, and you need to solve the next one and move on. So it is a little bit on the hoof, but I think everybody in the alliances is learning. There's probably more similarities across the universities than are actually dividing them.
Good, great, okay. And then, as we're talking about processes and red tape, I guess one of the big things we've heard in other conversations and other areas about protecting the researcher, essentially giving the researcher time to do their teaching, their work and the research, and streamlining the workflow as much as possible. Is that, as you revisit processes, is that one of the things that comes up again in some of these discussions about how to essentially make the researcher, essentially save the time for the researcher to be as productive on the research versus the administration?
Yeah, there's an interesting study that was done by Encura in the mid-90s, I think, where they looked at of the admin time required on a research project, how much of that was done by various actors. And they sort of came down to, there was an irreducible 40% that had to be done by the PI. So it's writing the proposal and doing the reports and all of that kind of stuff. And the rest could be done by appropriately capable research offices. In our own estimation, the PI effort in our case is probably a lot higher than 40. I would guess it's probably closer to 60%. And one of the things that we want to do, and why we've gone for this notion of a research backbone across the university, is to try and reduce that PI effort. And they also, our researchers also teach some pretty exceptional teaching loads per week. So whatever minutes we can make available to them to concentrate on the research project, we need to be doing that.
Great. Okay. I have a question here from Sue Bengtson. She asks, what is the go live date for Pure? How long a process has it been?
Okay, well, let me answer the second part of that first, right? So we started the move to Cris probably back at the end of 2008, and we wrote our own one in the meantime. Well, we wrote the first module of what was going to be our own one at that stage. And that's been really, really, really useful for us. We've got some very nice data out of that. My eternal hope is that the go live date will be, it's a bit like nuclear fusion. Go live date will be 6 weeks. But at the moment, since we started, it's always been 6 weeks. But we are hoping to do this in maybe the end of January or early February next year to have the big bang go live for everybody.
Great. Okay. Well, good luck with that. We'll be here to help you if you need anything. And
thank you very much.
Yeah. Questions that are out there. So if that's, well, here they come. Sorry. They just showed up. Susie, excellent presentation, John. I completely agree with how complicated we made each process over the years in the institutes. And I agree, though, through the identification of workflows in the award management system within Pure, that you get a chance to revisit what to do and why to do it, and to streamline the process. We've taken a stance. If it's not required for an audit perspective, then get rid of it.
Yep, Susie, I completely agree. And if it's FOI, I will just put it up there. Yeah, completely agree.
Great. Okay, and then here's a question from Theo. You mentioned 3 design principles for how you assess researchers. What are the key indicators you're looking at, and have these changed over time?
So at the very beginning of the process, the only ones that were really open to us were simply counting things. So how many publications? We didn't even have things like, God forbid, I hate saying this, H indices, and so on and so on. Recently, there has been, well, it's a movement that's across the world now and across the funders, is this move to a more humane DORA or Leiden type set of indicators and metrics. There is a discussion going on within our own university and within the and within the EUT Plus network about what that would mean for different kinds of researchers in different disciplines, and particularly there's a big divide between the kind of things that are appropriate for arts, humanities, and social science researchers and the STEM disciplines. So that is a live issue. When you go around and have a look at how these things are working in various parts of the world, one of the things that always comes down to is the biggest part of this is how do you build those kind of more humane indicators into things like the recruitment, retention, progression, and promotion of researchers, especially younger researchers. And if you put that requirement together with open research, you end up with a very interesting potential conflict between the two of those, which we need to resolve at some stage, so that people can be open and can be humane, and we can get good, excellent research. We can identify our good, excellent researchers.
Great. Thanks, John. Thanks for your comments on that and for your overall talk. I think that many of the things that you are grappling with as you go through this journey are ones that many of other institutions that we speak with have similar challenges. So it's good to share those, and over time, I'm sure progress will be made. So,
Hope so.
With that, out of questions, and also just about time to go to the next session. So thank you, John, for your time. And
thank you very much. Thanks for the time.
Along the agenda, we'll introduce our moderators. Will take over for the next 2 track sessions.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.